we're going to look at the OR function. The OR function can either be used on its own, or it can be nested within the if statement. Now, the nesting of putting it in the if statement, that's how we actually use it the most. But I'm going to use it on its own so you can see what it does. Now, I'm going to click into F2 here, and what I want to do is I want to have the function, the OR function, evaluate the number of years with the company and the appraisal score. So I'm going to take a look at the fx and use the OR. We go, and it says checks whether any of the arguments are true and returns a true or false. Returns false only if all the arguments are false. Perfect. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take the years with the company, and if that's over 20, and I'm using over because I don't want it to equal 20, okay, it has to be 21 or over. And then for the second one, it's going to be the appraisal score has to be over 4. Actually, I'm going to make this, because look, they're both, we've got a true and a false, sorry, equal to 4. That's better. They're both true, and so I'm actually going to change this one to 30. Now, this is the great thing about using the insert function or the function arguments windows, that you can actually see what the answers are, and that way if you got it wrong and you thought for this one, oh wait, that was supposed to be, you know, a false for this one and a true for that one, then you can just check and see what your logical test was. Then we just OK it, and it brings a true, or if I just copy that down, a false, depending on whether or not either one is true. But I don't know about you, but the true and the false doesn't really look so good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to redo that. I'm just going to get rid of the whole thing, and I'm going to nest it. So I'm going to put the OR within the if statement. So we start with what we want to finish with, which is the if statement. So we go to our if, and while we're sitting within our logical test, because that's where our OR goes, make sure your cursor is in there, and we go up to this drop down here, click on it, and the OR is right there. So now if you look, I've got my if and I've got my OR, and I've got the two of them sitting here, so I can click on the first logical test, and that was the number of years was over 30, and then the next one was the appraisal score was equal to 4. Okay, now at this point I wouldn't click on OK because that closes the whole thing, and I want to go back to my if. So I look back on my formula bar, and you can see the if sitting there. I click once on it, and it changes my function argument so that I can see my OR within the logical test. I can now click on the value of true. Now if it's true, I want the word award. Otherwise, I want nothing at all. So I put 2 quotes. If I leave it blank at this point, it's going to put the word false in. So, and you can see it says if omitted, false is returned. So I put 2 quotation marks, which means it's a manual way of entering nothing. You don't have to put a space between them. Actually, I suggest you do not put a space between them. Just put 2 quotes, and then OK, and then I can copy that down. And you can see that when I click in, I still have my function, but when I click out, it doesn't look like I do. So nesting the function, you can either type it, or I prefer using the insert function because it can be easier depending on how whether you like it or not. So that is nesting an OR with an if.